Thank you for joining today with Simpatico and Proactive Leadership Group. We're happy to have you with us on this journey for unlocking business potential through Simpatico's new MIP offering. I've got with me today a special guest, Coach Mike Myru from Proactive Leadership Group. He's the founder and chief strategist of Proactive. We've been working together for a little over 10 years now, Mike. Is that right?
That's right.
Awesome. So we're ready to get started and talk about what an MIP is. For those of you that are new to the webinar series with Simpatico, you've got a question and answers section that's right there on the side. If at any time you have a question, click that button, ask your question. We've got people standing by to answer those as we go through the webinar. So don't be afraid to ask a question. Okay, so we're talking today about MIP. Simpatico has just come out with this offering. I think an MIP is a new term for a lot of people. It's a managed intelligence provider. An MIP is an industry term that was coined just a couple of months ago, both by Gartner and Deloitte, putting out some research around what the next evolution of managed services and managed service providers look like. For us, it's been a fantastic term to be able to really put together what we feel like we've been doing for the last couple of years for our customers anyway. That managed intelligence provider focuses on automation and AI and really extending into businesses what those capabilities are to drive a couple of different outcomes. At Simpatico, when we talk about MIP, there are really 5 goals that we're trying to get to. We want to get to a problem faster. We want to resolve it faster. We want to resolve a problem cheaper. We want to improve a customer experience, improve an employee experience, or create dramatically better visibility into our customers' businesses. And when we do those things, we found that it's really helped driven the results that these businesses see, either adding directly to the bottom line, helping in customer retention, employee retention, or helping them to really make business decisions much faster than what they could with that visibility. So Mike, as we talk about these different things and how MIP really works within a business environment, can you tell us a little bit about Proactive and how that has worked with some of your businesses?
Sure, Corey. Thank you, first of all, for allowing me to be with you today. At Proactive, we focus on how do we help organizations get better. And there's lots of ways we can get better. We can do it organizationally. We can do it with people. We can do it with systems, processes, financially. We look at the organization holistically to say where are the opportunities to get better, and that's why our tagline is results improved. So we're always after how do we get improvement in all the areas of the business, from strategy, leadership, marketing, operationally, all the way through to the ramifications financially. In regards to the managed intelligence provider role, we see us as a support to that, because businesses only have so much time and they only have so much money. And what we want to do is we want to find leverage points. We want to find those areas that give us the highest return on investment for the efforts that we put forth. And so part of what we do at Proactive is we help identify those areas, then help develop strategies to take them to the levels that we want to achieve. And then we also hold organizations accountable for making sure that that happens. And so we've been fortunate enough to work with Simpatico for a little over 10 years, with Corey and Greg and the whole team. And they are a true case study of what coaching can do for an organization. And I'll let Corey elaborate on some of their experience, but it's one of the joys that we have as a company to watch the growth, both organizationally and in the individuals, watching people grow into new roles and responsibilities. So that's what we do, is we help provide some of the tools and resources to help organizations first identify their issues and then come up with some solutions to make them better.
Yeah, Mike, it's been a great experience working with Proactive Leadership Group and seeing what Simpatico has been able to do over the last 10 years. I don't know if you realize this, but Greg and I were talking just a couple of weeks ago about that growth and what it's done for us as an organization. We're a little over 16x the size that we were when we
Wow.
started this journey with Proactive. And that's it's an amazing statistic to go back and really look at. You don't realize it when you're going through that growth
Yeah,
journey, but
right.
as you get to the end of it and you're looking back, oh man, that's awesome. And now we're looking to do 5 or 10x where we are
Mhm.
today into
Right,
the future.
right. It's been interesting, Corey. We were together in Whistler last year, and we had the opportunity to hear Dr. Benjamin Hardy, talking about 10x is better than 2x. And it really begins to reframe our thinking about the potential. And that's why I'm so excited about MIP, is it can be one of those levers that allows us to get that 10x result that we all want, and to do it the right way. And that's the other thing too that we find is, when we talk about AI and things like that, part of the challenge with really getting the value out of what Simpatico is offering is having the foundational components in place that we can then scale and leverage. And that's where we see some of our greatest opportunities, is when organizations don't have that foundation, is getting that in place. Just that alone gives us exponential opportunity. But more importantly, it's when you begin to realize that, hey, this stuff really does work, that you begin to embrace it as an organization. For example, culture, having the right culture in your business to attract people, and vendors, attract those vendors that want to do business with you as much as the talent that you need to be able to execute your plans. Where you guys had great success is being open-minded, being willing to try some stuff that maybe you go, I'm not so sure I understand how this works. Part of it is you got to trust the process. And that's what I would say to anybody watching this, is that the stuff we're talking about is not some pie in the sky, you know, shake the earth kind of thing. This is all based on practical, proven, reliable methodologies that we know produce the results we're talking about. And so, we dig in, we begin to identify those areas that can give us that exponential growth. And I think you guys are a great example of that.
Yeah. Yeah. When we talk about core values internally, we've had a big journey with Simpatico as we've gone through this over the last decade. And I think one thing that just is a reoccurring theme that we hear all the time internally is authenticity.
Yeah.
Authenticity makes a huge difference. There's a lot of organizations, like you said, that have core values on the wall, but actually living those and having that part of your hiring processes built into everything that you do with your business, the way that you engage your customers makes a big difference. Not just
Yeah.
helping set that with your employees, but really living those core values. I love that from Proactive Leadership Group, having that holistic view. That's why Simpatico is partnering with Proactive to really understand what's happening in a business, to understand the underlying business processes, what's really happening, not just what's written down as a business process that's in a
Right.
book somewhere on a shelf, but really getting to understand where the business process is, where the opportunities are for adding that automation, adding AI capabilities so that we can get to the results that we're at. Before we jump into too much of that, I was reading in Fortune magazine. They actually published a study by MIT 2 weeks ago, and they're saying 95% of all of these AI implementations are failing.
Yeah.
And the reason they're all failing is that we're seeing across the industry, whether it's large or small business, there's a failure to execute from an overall strategy. Without that strategic roadmap, most of those implementations are just doomed to failure. You may get some element of success, but you're never really going to get the results unless you're really trying to solve an actual business problem. If we know what the process is, we know where we're trying to get to, and then we select the tools and start the processes, that's where we're seeing the real results. And in all of the case studies we've done and the success that we've had with our existing customers, we've taken that approach. So from your perspective, Mike, What does that look like? And, when Simpatico is engaging with Proactive to do a BPAR, a business process alignment roadmap, what does that look like from Proactive's perspective?
What we do, we first thing we do is we do an assessment of the organization to look at it holistically around the 8 core functions that every business has and say, how are you doing compared to industry best practices? So what that does is that helps us identify what we call the hot spots. What are the areas that if we do some work in this area can give us immediate return on investment? And we have to remember that AI is not the end all be all going to save every business. It is a tool that allows us to be more efficient, to be more to save time. It's a tool that does that, but it also gives us some insight based on the questions that we ask. What AI does is it takes all the cumulative information in the world and now makes that instantly available to us. So we're getting multiple perspectives and multiple data points that allow us to really understand the right answers to some of the questions. And so what we're in the process of doing is we do the assessment that helps us understand what questions we need to ask. Then we drill down working in the organization to really understand how things get done. My experience, Corey, is when we do that alone, we typically find enough low-hanging fruit to cover whatever investment there is in what we're doing. And if you find a better way to accomplish what the organization needs, if it's manufacturing, can we cut some time out of the process? Can we get a better supplier? Can we improve the experience? You mentioned 2 things earlier, the customer experience and the team member experience. If we can address both of those, the business exponentially gets better. And so we identify those areas, those hot spots, we ask the questions, we drill down, and we begin to identify what we call the priorities. What are the things that we need to invest focus and time on in order to improve the business? Then we look at how do we get leverage? And leverage typically comes through the implementation of technology and tools. And so with AI, we have a powerful tool with the couple that with the infrastructure that Simpatico provides a company. Now we've got leverage points. So not only do we find the answers, we find ways to find leverage, and then we come back and we talk about implementation and execution. And that is where the rubber meets the road, because if we don't implement or execute, then we're destined to fail just like everybody else. So part of the value of working with a coaching organization is we hold you accountable.
I love it. I love it. And we've seen a couple of really good practical examples. Simpatico had a prospect that reached out to us, and they were looking for help with automation and AI. They wanted to accelerate their sales process. As a business, they were not creating the revenue that they really wanted. They weren't able to get past that 10 million top line milestone. We all know that's a big goal.
Big one.
Right?
Yeah.
It's hard to get over that. But these guys were just trying, and they could not get enough sales momentum to get past it. Well, we dug in, started having conversations, started looking at it from a business perspective. What we found was that they really had a problem with churn. They were dropping customers off the back end faster than they could get people through the door.
Yeah.
And so when we started looking at it, yes, they had sales that they wanted to engage. Everybody wants higher sales revenue. But what we found was the biggest problem they had as an organization was actually that churn. So we started implementing things to try and save that customer experience. Having faster response times to customer issues when they have problems with sales, with finance, with just getting deliveries from the organization, those types of things. By changing some of those things and making it easier, improving that customer experience, they had significantly less churn. It took about 4 months before we started really seeing those results, but they didn't have near the sales problem they thought they did because we fixed some of those churn issues. To me, that's a great example of where we're talking about this experience with the business coaches. The immediate things that you see as an organization, maybe I need to get this thing working. But the reality could be completely different. Having that third party perspective and someone looking at those numbers and holding you accountable really kind of helps expose some of those things that maybe sometimes it's tough to see when you're really close to the issue.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another point, that having a coach or a coaching organization working with you, that's another value proposition, in that we a lot of times will see things that you don't see. An outside perspective can spot it quickly, okay, which then saves us time. And smart, most of the business people I know are very, very intelligent, very smart people. But it's just like anything else. We've got so many points of focus that we can't hone in on that one issue and really see the cause, just like you were talking about. Finding out that root cause, okay? And then how do we address that? And then the ripple effect of that. We all have strengths and weaknesses. So what we want to do is leverage the strengths. Let's find those strengths. I have a friend that is a strength finders coach, and he talks about the return on investment on our strengths versus weaknesses. Because a lot of times the perception is, if we've got a weakness, we need to mitigate that. We need to work to make that a strength. It's the wrong answer. What we want to do is identify those strengths and find leverage on those strengths, because the ROI on leveraging your strengths is 1,000% higher than fixing a weakness. So let's find those strengths and really figure out how we can leverage those points. And it could be in customer experience, it could be in team member experience, it could be in process development. And so part of it is having the courage to say, maybe there's a better way. Maybe there's a leverage point that we can find that will give us the ability to accomplish what we need to without having all the work, without cutting steps out of the process. And from a process standpoint, we call that cycle time reduction. How can we reduce the time that it takes to accomplish what we need to accomplish? Well, in order to do that, Corey, you've got to have clarity around your process. Do you have a documented process? So what we want to do is we want to implement a process. And with AI is a great tool to help with this. There are some technologies now that can cut the amount of time to document our process literally to minutes, where it used to take weeks and days and weeks to get done.
I love that. And once we get that process documentation, you know, once a customer has worked with Proactive, they have good documentation. We know where the processes are. We know how the data should flow from the business between marketing to sales to operations to finance, you know, that entire chain. Once we understand that, now we can start automating. We can
Yeah,
put processes in place to speed up those cycles and to get that communication down to minimal timeframes and, you know, significantly less effort. We saw an example where we've got a use case with a customer that they had an issue with aging. It seems like every company has, you know, some type of process. Well, this company in particular, they really hadn't updated their business process in the last 20 years probably. And
yeah,
so they weren't taking advantage of any of the things that are out there with ACH, wire transfers. They're not looking even at credit card processing. They're still, you know, mailing checks back and forth and
yeah,
faxing invoices. And so we were able to take them from 26 days aging on average down to less than 6.
yeah.
We freed up $500,000 in cash flow for the business by just changing and updating some of those processes and putting a little bit of technology in place. For that in particular, we had automations that would send out notices proactively. We didn't have people that are sitting there doing that.
Right.
And to me, that's a lot of what the MIP advantage is. It's not just let's put in AI all over the place. That's not really our approach. We want to apply the right technology where it makes sense.
That's the key, Corey. Totally agree with that. And here's what's interesting. It is shocking how many companies are still doing everything manually.
Yeah.
It's blows my mind. These companies that you would think are should be very sophisticated, that are still doing so much manual work, where technology could completely eliminate that effort. It just blows my mind. And that's where I think we have one of the greatest opportunities, is to identify those areas, leverage Simpatico and your expertise in systems and solutions to be able to come in and make a recommendation to say, you know what, if you use this, had this tool or this platform, we could totally eliminate that work. Now that frees up manpower and resources to go do the things like taking care of your customer and taking care of your team members. which you always get a positive ROI.
That's right. We talk
So,
a lot about that difference. There's so much work that is just human engagement, human
yeah,
workers. This AI revolution, all the automation, we're seeing a transition to digital workers. And for
sure.
me, that's one of the really important partnerships about having someone like Simpatico as an MIP to help manage that transition to a digital workforce, but then to continue to manage that. As systems change, if you've got all of your finance and QuickBooks online and you've got all of your CRM and Salesforce and you're trying to keep those things connected, what happens when QuickBooks updates or when Salesforce
Yeah,
updates and you've got all this automation? You need
yeah,
a partner to help manage all of those digital workers and digital agents to keep everything connected, to keep the automations flowing. And that I think is what a lot of people overlook. We may be able to hit some really high efficiency one time, but we have to have that consistently to really get the ROI that we're looking for.
totally agree. And what's interesting, I read an article a couple of months ago. It was talking about ERP system implementation. And statistically, what they're saying is 70% of all ERP implementations fail to achieve the desired objectives. And the question, you come back and go, why? Companies are spending billions of dollars on this. Why are they all failing? Well, it's because they're not willing to change the way they do business to take advantage of the software. They want to change the software to fit the way they do business. Our mindset is you always adapt the business to get the leverage of the software. Okay, because every time you change it, now you've got all these interfaces that you got to deal with and make sure that you don't break it when they do an upgrade or whatever. And so coming back around to this process issue, you were talking earlier about the handoffs. That's where process leverage breaks, is when you implement a new technology and all of a sudden the handoff is different. Sometimes the handoffs go away because it's all automated. And you've got to make sure that your process flows the way that's supposed to produce outcomes that you want. We always look at processes as there's a core set of processes that's the business engine that runs the business. It's typically marketing, which attracts opportunity, sales, which converts those opportunities to customers. There's operations, which is the delivery of the products and services, and then there's billing and collection. Okay? That's the engine. And then you've got teams like IT, accounting, HR, legal, facilities that support the engine. Okay. Well, we have handoffs in and out of all of this and making sure that we have clarity around those points so that when we do implement a technology or leverage point, we know what we need to check before we can say this is working the way that it needs to. And it's out of sight, out of mind. Oh, I forgot that we do this, or oh, I forgot we do that.
We've talked a lot about how Simpatico's worked with Proactive and the way that we're engaging our customers and working through that process. To me, as a technologist, I love technology. I want to implement it where it makes sense, but we always struggle on the implementation side with really getting that full adoption. You can have the best technology in the world that fits exactly what needs to happen. And if the business doesn't adopt and use it, it really doesn't generate any benefit. And that's where I feel like there's a great partnership. As we identify in the business process, where is the need? What's the business goal we're trying to solve? We find the right technology. We create a scope of work so that everybody knows exactly what that is that we're going to do, what the ROI is, and then a roadmap. And the roadmap is not just implementation, it's all the way through adoption.
Yeah.
And partnering with Proactive to work with the business during implementation, after implementation, through the adoption phase is how we really have seen the best benefit for those businesses, to make sure that we're not just throwing money away, we're not just putting in technology, we're actually adopting the processes to what needs to happen with the new technology. Like you said, with automation and AI, what we've seen is now we can bridge almost an entire process span. If we can automate the entire sales process or 90% of that sales process, we have a dramatically different outcome. That business process has to change pretty dramatically to accommodate that. And that's where I feel like we've got really good just handoffs between what Simpatico is doing, what Proactive can do to really get the best benefit out of that automation.
Yeah. for the last 25 years, we really pride ourselves on change management. Okay. You use the right word. Adoption is the key. Okay. That's why all this stuff fails, is it fails to, you can get it implemented. I mean, I've had clients just in the last 5 years that have implemented an ERP system only to have to kill it, the cost of it, because it never got adopted. Okay. They kept doing what they were doing. They never stopped that and started using the leveraging the capability of the ERP. And so it never got adopted. And so the problem was they weren't willing to let us manage the change management of what needs to be done. I'm going to date myself here with this story, but we were implementing email at the company I worked for, and word processing. And this was brand new. And I remember going to the secretary, the administrative assistant of the CEO of the company. And I told her, I said, eventually that typewriter you've got is going to go away. Oh no, you're not getting rid of my typewriter. There's nothing on that computer that I want to do. And I said, I'll tell you what, take the letter, and I said, I want you to type it. And I said, I'm going to type it in the word processor. Okay. I'm going to be right there with you. Now, I can't type as fast as she could. So she typed it. She was done a couple of minutes before I was. But I then took that letter and I said, let's take this paragraph out and let's change these words. You go do that, and I'm going to do the same thing in the word processor. I was done in seconds. She had to retype the whole letter. And the light bulb went on. She said, oh, I could see how this works now. I could see the value in it. And that's what we have to do, is we have to have people that see the value of changing their process or changing the way they do it. And it's through that experience of having been down that road and helped organizations have successful implementation of this stuff that we've seen that how to manage that change. A lot of it goes with communication, Corey. I mean, it's really explaining not just the what we need to do, but why we need to do it. Okay. We're not doing this to make people's job harder. See, the other challenge is we're dealing with human dynamics also. Psychological dynamics of a lot of times our perceived value in an organization is what we know, and we want to maintain that sense of they need me. And we feel like if we give that up, that we're no longer as valuable. And that's totally wrong thinking. What we have to do is help them understand that by getting this stuff automated and working and adopted, we're freeing them up to do those things that enhance the customer experience and make the business better. Because the excuse is always, I don't have time. I hear that all the time. I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to fix that. Well, it's because we're doing this stuff that can be automated that then would free up that time. And so it's a way to add more value. There's so much negative information out there about what AI is going to do. They're talking about jobs being eliminated. I think that's just crap. I do. I think that's just totally bogus. All we're going to do is we're going to realign resources, which should give team members more security because they're adding more value to the business rather than sitting there doing transactional stuff.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing a lot of that apprehension really across all verticals. I had a conversation with one of the legal customers that we have. We've got customers all over the U.S. and these guys were up in the Northeast. Most companies that have a service delivery area where they're billing time, they're really concerned about what AI is going to look like. If you're a law firm and you're billing based on the amount of time it takes to prepare these documents, to work through different case law information, do all the research and due diligence, the expectation from the customer base is that you will be assimilating these AI technologies and they want to see their bill drop. Right. Or you might have billed 20 hours before, they're expecting 2 to 3 hours. And these law firms that we're talking to, they're really concerned with, how do I really get the results that I need? How do I get in front of the market? Because they see it coming. Either they're going to lead the market and they're going to be the first ones there that are benefiting from all the efficiencies while the market rates are still pretty normal and driving down, or they're going to be the ones getting drugged behind everybody else, and they're going to see their market share continue to erode because they're still having to bill much higher rates. They don't have the efficiencies there. And so we're seeing a lot of business drivers that are saying we have to get to this technology, but we don't really know how to get there. We don't know what the right process is. And then there's the other side with the employees that are just so apprehensive to use this. They're worried about, what does this mean for me? How does it impact my workflow? Am I still going to be here as a valued employee? And I think we have to find that balance. And that's where I think, as a technologist, we can find the technology, we can do implementations, but partnering with a business coach to actually help with that adoption side and get the right messaging to the employees and really get everything, copacetic, so that we're not just, hitting the technology hurdles and getting over those, but really getting the business results. That's what MIP for me is all about, is how do we really deliver the business value there?
See, I think I totally agree with you. I think the real ultimate benefit to an organization in implementation of some of the stuff we're talking about is that it gives you bandwidth to work on your value proposition. How do we add more value to the customer? Okay, because the more value we add, the less likely they are to go somewhere else, the more they appreciate what we can do. And it gives us that opportunity to be really creative and entrench ourselves with a competitive advantage. You talk about the law firms. What's the biggest criticism of law firms? Okay, every call is a 5-minute bill. Okay, it's 15 minutes for this. What if I could do that automatically with a knowledge base where I could ask my question without it costing me money? Is that more value add? See, that's the kind of stuff we can do with technology. And what that does is that frees up your attorneys now to think strategy in their cases rather than the technical aspects of gather information and present information. Okay, which ties up about 40 to 50% of their bandwidth. And so, well, I don't have time to strategize. And what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot more collaboration too. So it's funny how all this stuff kind of works together. It frees up time that allows us to collaborate. And that's where you get those $1 million ideas. What if we could do this for the customer? What if we could do this? And you've got time to think it through and then come back to a partner like Proactive or Simpatico and say, we want to do this. Now, how can we do that? We can tell you from a process standpoint what to do. We can find the leverage points with Simpatico to leverage the technology. But that's where we gain the biggest advantage, is this competitive entrenchment that we can create by having this stuff in place. Because the reality is, there's, and this kind of goes statistically, only about 3 to 5% of organizations in the next 10 years are going to adopt what we're talking about. That means that you're going to blow by your competition in ways that you don't even know yet, okay, by having this stuff in place.
Well, Mike, it's been an awesome conversation. Really love having you on and talking about the different partnership strategies and why it's such a good fit between Simpatico's MIP and Proactive Leadership Group. As you guys saw on the title slide just a minute ago, we've got Q&A still going. So if you've got some more questions, throw those in the chat. We'll have people that are going to stick around after the webinar and answer some of those questions a little bit longer. If you're watching this on YouTube later, feel free to reach out. Mike, what's the best way for them to get a hold of Proactive?
The absolute best way is just send me an email. My email is mike@results, RESULTS, improved, IMPROVED.com. And just send me an email, any questions or issues. One of the things we do, Corey, is we offer an organizational health assessment. And we'd be happy to do that with any company that's interested. We offer a complimentary debrief of that, and it gives you some insight into some of these areas that we're talking about that could potentially be improved through the leverage of AI and technology.
That's perfect. Yeah, we've got similar contact info for Simpatico. We're wrapping up here, but we'll throw that up on a slide here in a minute with all the contact info. If you have any questions, please reach out. Mike, thanks again. It's been a great conversation.
Or it's been a pleasure, my friend.
Awesome. We'll see you guys next time.